So let's talk about kind of the different flavors here. I'll kick this question your way, Tim. What do you feel like is the difference between, let's say, a framework versus a talk track versus a script? I think it might be good for us to kind of get on the same page with the lingo associated with this before we dig into some of these examples.
Yeah, for sure. When I think about a script, I think about, if you were, let's say, in a play in your high school theater class, right? You have a script, you have lines that you have to follow because that's, how the show um, will continue to progress onward. But I think with cold calling, what you'll quickly realize is that you may have an idea of how this call may go, or if you ask this question, it might go one way or the other way. But there's also a million other ways that you can go. So, in my opinion, I think I agree with Jack in the sense where when you're new, cold calling is something that you haven't done before. A script can be very helpful. But I also think at some point it can be your enemy because when you know the response isn't that the prospect gives you isn't laid out on the script, now you're kind of like fumbling and you're just reading off words, not really actually thinking about what you're saying. And now you're kind of have your hands tied behind your back, and maybe you start getting desperate or feature dumping or talking over your prospect. So that's why, like in my opinion, um, a framework is what allows you to be successful on your cold calls. And what a framework looks like is a strategy or an approach that you take that's going to naturally progress this conversation along. So one thing that I've always done coaching SDRs is teach the mindset that, like, hey, the first 30 seconds of the call buys you the next minute, and then the next minute during that conversation buys you the next minute, and then buys you the opportunity to ask somebody for the meeting. So an example of a framework, Jason, that I would potentially coach an SDR is you open the call, you introduce yourself, and then you propose a question with two scenarios. So you might say, hey, most sales leaders I'm speaking with are struggling with these two main things. So you present two pain points, let the person who you're speaking with decide which one's more of a pain point for them, and then you let that conversation flow down that way, and you're in a position to provide value and solve the pain points or the challenges that business may be facing. So what I think of, when you break down a cold call, I think it's an opener, it's a conversation, and that opener opens the conversation, and then the conversation is ultimately what allows you to close the meeting because you'll have some type of pain points or value that you've provided to this prospect, for their time to be worth meeting with you.